The Parks Committee meeting for July 15th, 2020 is now in session. Roll call. Alder Weary is excused. Alder Gerlach.
I'm here.
Alder Burnett.
Present.
And the chair, Alder Scannell, is here. Take a motion to approve our agenda.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Alder Gerlach, seconded by Alder Burnett. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Opposed? We have an agenda. Can I keep rolling along, James, or do you need a moment?
Nope, you are good.
Okay, I'll take a motion to approve our minutes from our last meeting.
Move to approve.
Second.
Moved to approve by Alder Burnett, seconded by Alder Gerlach. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, our minutes from our last meeting are approved.
Yep, we're ready.
All right, on to regular business. Action on the request by Alder Johnson to consider the installation of surveillance equipment at Seymour Park. Staff, should we hear from the Alder first, or did you want to jump in first?
It's up to you.
Well, Alder Johnson, you're here. Why don't we hear from you first?
Thank you, Chairman. So this is about a year ago, I had written a grant to try to secure some funding to install surveillance equipment there. We were not successful. But the problems, I guess, that were driving the need for that continue to persist. Obviously, and most notably with the shooting that had occurred there, probably about a month ago now. But there is a lot of activity that is well documented, well known by the neighbors in that area. And the hope is that the installation of surveillance equipment will help deter some of that activity that currently goes on in that area. But obviously, it's one of those things you can't just put up signs and say this area is under surveillance and not actually have the cameras to back it up. So we do have cameras I know that are installed in some other parks throughout the city. I do think it's important that whatever we do over there aligns with whatever security infrastructure system that this currently have. So really all I'm looking for at this point is probably a referral to staff. Last I talked with Director Ditchite, it sounded like he thought that they might have some preliminary numbers. It doesn't appear like that was included in the packet, in which case then I would just request that this be referred to staff to give staff an opportunity to actually figure out how much it would cost for us to do that, and they can bring it back to the committee at a later date.
Okay, Alder. I always want to call you Alder. Director Ditchite. Anything on that?
Yeah, I would be fine with that motion. I missed most of the conversation. I apologize. I came late, just logged on a minute ago, so I missed the conversation. But I did hear the proposed motion by Alder Johnson, and I am okay with that proposed motion.
Okay. There wasn't any discussion. It was just Alder Johnson speaking. We didn't have any discussion. So you got it all.
This Mike Ronick. I could give an update.
Okay.
On the project. Currently, City Network Technician Jason Bamman and Commander Abel went and did a site investigation of the park. They have selected 2 locations to put cameras at the park. We are currently ordering some network wireless point-to-point access points to get video back to our City Network servers from the cameras located at the park. We're hoping to be installed probably within a month.
Oh.
So the final estimate, we're not going to know until we know if the wireless connections are adequate or not. So that will make that'll be a big determination of how expensive it would be for the cameras.
Okay.
So do we know?
Owls?
Pardon me?
Camera's going to look like owls?
Yeah, there's a potential for vandalism, that's for sure. But that's the risk we take. We're looking at a project probably less than 5,000.
Do we know if 2 cameras is sufficient? And the reason I bring that up is because, they parked the Badger over there. And I'm telling you, the folks that are over there that are creating the problem, they know exactly how to find the right sight lines to avoid those things. And I literally watched 2 people shoot up behind the shelter there that was out of sight of the Badger, right? Like, so are we confident that the 2 cameras will be sufficient enough to get ample coverage to create the level of surveillance and deterrence that we're looking for?
I can't make that determination until they are set up. They will be pan, zoom, and tilt cameras. We should be able to move them to where certain activity is. I can't guarantee 100% coverage, though. You'd really have to go over with a wireless mesh over the park to really get complete coverage. That would be expensive.
Sure, and I appreciate that. I guess maybe more what I'm even suggesting is the neighbors that live near there are full of valuable information about exactly where a lot of this stuff is going on. And I would hate for us to not take an opportunity to consult with those individuals who see this activity every single day, where we kind of could go in. And even though we have that expert, perspective, I think sometimes having those boots on the ground perspective can be very valuable with helping us identify spaces that might require some additional coverage.
I think that's a good idea. I will ask Commander Abel to reach out to you for citizens' names that he can interview, and we'll check out those locations.
Sure, I'd appreciate that. That'd be wonderful.
Olderdorf?
I'm so pleased that this can go along so quickly. I'm wondering about the funding source for the $5,000. Was that in the budget?
It is not in the parks budget, but we'll look into where potential funding sources can come from when we bring it back to Park Committee for review and approval.
That's great. Thank you.
Anything else from anyone? Then I'll take a motion. We should still refer this to staff.
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Alder Burnett, seconded by Alder Gerlach to refer this to staff. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, staff, it is all yours. On to number 2, James.
Good to go.
Consideration with possible action on the request by Alderdorf to consider putting in a park in the Bay Highlands area as requested by residents. Well, Alderdorf.
I would like to hear from staff first.
Sure.
I see there's a nice map there, so.
Yes, there's actually 2 maps.
Okay.
So I've attached 2 maps to the agenda packet. The first map is a park map showing the proximity of developed parkland in relation to the neighborhoods throughout the entire city. So we did highlight on that map where the Bay Highlands neighborhood is in relation to the city. So as you can see in the map, it's the big purple circle. There are no developed neighborhood parks or community parks developed in that area. So there's a big void of parkland there. The second map, if you page through your agenda packet, you'll see which currently shows the properties that the Parks Department currently owns. Now, those properties are not shown on the first map because these are undeveloped properties that the parks owns. So they're not developed, so they're not a neighborhood park, they're not a community park, they're just property we own. So of the 2 properties that are highlighted on the second map, the larger property to the west or the north is a large wooded area with a lot of wetlands throughout the entire site. So it's very unlikely that we would ever be able to develop that into a neighborhood park because we would have to fill so many wetlands and cut down so many trees in order to do that. There is a smaller strip of land to the east. It's a very narrow strip that you'll see is also city-owned or park department-owned and maintained. That you could develop into a neighborhood park And activities that would be well suited there would be a playground, an open shelter, maybe some sculpture or some developed landscape beds. But it is not a wide enough area to really develop it into any athletic fields. So there just is not enough room there to do any sort of ball fields, soccer fields, anything like that. Whatever we put in there would have small in scale. There are also just a few wetlands in the corner of that property. So the city acquired those two parcels from the developer when they developed that neighborhood. So it was a donation in lieu of a parkland fee. So that's the reason that the Parks Department has ownership of that land, but it has never been developed due to lack of funding and wetlands also. So currently, there is no funding available to purchase additional parkland beyond what you see in these maps. And there also is no money in our 5-year capital improvement plan that we just proposed or outlined a few months ago to the city council for these properties that we currently own. So if that's the direction the park committee and city council would want us to take, is to develop the smaller property into a small neighborhood park, we would have to revisit our year capital improvement plan, or this would be a project, 5 years out or beyond, depending on where the other priorities shift. So if we were to add this in the near future, it would shift the other priorities that have already been presented as park priorities. So really, I just wanted to give you the information that we currently have, show you the maps where the property is that we currently own, and then talk to you a little bit about the budget for it if you wanted to develop a park in that area. So, that being said, I don't know which direction as a committee you would be looking to go with this. So at this point, this is all I really have prepared for presentation.
Okay, Alder Dorff.
Yeah, Dan, so the person that wrote this, and it was included in my original communication, talked about a parcel on Wolverine Trail. Is that what, that the city owns parcel 21242-3 on Wolverine Trail? Is that one of the ones that?
I don't know that off the top of my head. I'd have to look up that address in front of me right now. The city does own a little stormwater pond. Public Works does. You'll see that highlighted on the map. But unless I pull up a city map and look where Wolverine Trail is and look up that parcel, I can't tell you.
So the two that you have on there already, you don't think? One of the two ideas. I mean, I don't know. I can't see the name of it.
I don't think the streets are listed on this map.
Yeah, and it describes it as 46,000 square feet, but very narrow. So it might be that exact.
I think that's the property that the city owns. It's a very narrow property, but it's a big property because it's long.
It's long, right.
I'm just pulling up a map right now. Just give me a second. I'll be able to verify this in just a second. I'm just zooming into the map right now. So the parcel on Wolverine Trail is that narrow parcel.
Okay.
The parcel number is 21-242-3.
Right.
So that is that small, thin strip of property that we currently own.
So all I would ask of the committee is to look at the map where we have parkland all over the city of Green Bay. And in this area, it's a park desert, right? Is it like a food desert? But it's a park desert. So there's no parks at all there. And I certainly don't, I'm not certainly asking for anything to be taken off of your list. I'd like this to be put on your list, and if possible, sometime in the next 5 years. And again, just some playground equipment sounds wonderful. Something that the children in that area can access, because there aren't any close parks at all. So up to the committee what you feel you can do with that.
Alder Gerlach?
I'd just like to know what's the acreage of that strip?
Let me see if Let me see if I have that. The square footage is 46,000 over an acre.
Okay, it's very small.
Is it green? Are we talking about green acres?
It is green because it's all grass.
There we go.
There's nothing else there.
Alder Burnett, did you? Alder
Yeah,
Burnett?
I feel exactly what Alderperson Dorf feels on the far west side. My district, the 12th district, same situation. I don't know what it is about the two extreme ends of the city, the 1st and the 12th, but it just seems like the parks didn't get developed as the development happened in some of the newer parts of the city. So we have a lot of land in the 12th district, parkways and conservancies, but not the playground type things, not the fields and things where kids can do and families do activities. So I'm in the same situation as Alderperson Dorf. I like want to move forward with something, but yet I don't want to jostle the list of other very worthy projects in other parts of the city. It's just a very tough thing. My thing that we have an advantage in my district is we have the Oneida tribe who might partner with the city to develop some land, but that's a discussion for another day. So I don't know, whatever Alderperson Dorf recommends, I'm on board with. I just don't know where this fits in the list of projects.
So, Director Ditchite, if I'm not talking about a large, what is a kind of a minimal expenditure where we could get a playground for the children? What would be a minimal expenditure?
So typically playgrounds run about $100,000, and that includes the cost of the playground along with all of the surfacing, the wood chips. It also includes a little bit of site work. But in addition to that, we'd have to look at making it ADA compliant, which is running a sidewalk to it. I haven't explored what the cost of that would be. Minimal because we can't put the playground very far off of the road. So I don't think a sidewalk would cost that much. But then you get into other expenses is what else do you want besides the playground? Do you want security lighting in there? Because then there's an operational expense that you incur. Do you want to do landscaping? Do you want an open shelter that people can rent because there's no other parks in the nearby area? So it's one of those things where just putting in a playground, a rough estimate would be $100,000.
So I just guess maybe when you look at your plan, if it's something that could be considered.
Yeah, I mean, we could.
Committee.
I mean, if that's something you're interested in, I mean, we could research the feasibility of including funding to develop a park in this area as part of the 5-year capital improvement plan. And then we can present it in the fall of 2020 when we bring that plan forward. And if it's not in the plan, we can talk to you about the reasons why. So I guess what I would recommend is if that's something you want us to do, just direct it to staff to research the feasibility of including it in the plan, and we can discuss it several months from now when the plan is brought forward.
Sound satisfactory, Alder Dorf?
Oh, for sure. If that's what the committee is willing to do, definitely. It's just really a referral to staff to see if it's feasible.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah, I make that motion.
I second it.
Motion by Alder Burnett and seconded by Alder Gerlach. Any further discussion? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. Staff, Merry Christmas.
Thank you very much.
We're good, Chair.
Okay, number 3, consent with possible action on the update from staff on the budget, cost estimates, and phasing plan options for the beach project at Bay Beach Amusement Park.
Still putting together the details for this proposal, and we're not quite ready to discuss it at this meeting.
Okay.
So I'd recommend that you just hold this until the next park committee meeting to allow staff more time to finalize the details of a revised budget and phasing plan.
Okay. Can we talk about it for a half an hour first?
If you want to, sure.
I'll take a motion to hold. Oh, a question, Alder Gerlach?
Motion.
Oh, motion.
I move that we hold this until the next meeting.
Second.
A motion by Alder Gerlach, seconded by Alder Brunette. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Opposed? Passes unanimously.
Ready for number 4.
Number 4, consideration with possible action on the request for the Wildlife Sanctuary to reinstate the on-site, excuse me, deer management program. This is very
So-
good.
So in the agenda packet, you'll see a very detailed report on our research that we put together on this topic. So this issue was discussed last fall at the Park Committee. And the motion at the time was to refer to staff to scientifically identify the number of deer at the Wildlife Sanctuary, to establish a target number of deer desired at the Wildlife Sanctuary, and to leave the deer management program in place throughout the rest of the city, and also to identify alternative ways to reduce the herd. So that was the actual motion that was made last fall. Since has worked very closely with the wildlife biologists at the DNR to complete this estimated deer count on site, and then to finalize a report with recommendations. So over the past several years, the Wildlife Sanctuary did notice and has noticed what seems to be an overpopulation of deer. When we discussed that last fall, we didn't really have any scientific data to support that. So that's why the motion was made to look into it more. So what we've been noticing is there is a clear browse line. So this is where all of the natural vegetation from the ground up to about 4 to 6 feet high is basically stripped clear due to excessive deer feeding. And then the native plant species can't survive in the area, and invasive species begin to take over. So we've been actually seeing that more prevalent over the last few years. Our staff is also noticing quite a few very thin deer on site, which we hadn't previously seen. And that is also indicative of overpopulation. So the reason that we discussed this last fall was Alder Lefebvre this request forward, and she mentioned that this is becoming a neighborhood concern. So they're seeing more and more deer in their yards, and it's been problematic. So that's what we were witnessing last fall and even this year. So when we did our study here, what we did is we used 2 methods to evaluate the deer herd numbers on site. Both methods are approved industry standard methods for developing a head count. So the first one was a trail camera study, and that was conducted in the fall of 2019 over 1.5 months. So we set up trail cameras in 5 locations and counted the number of deer that came to those locations. And because it's in the fall, it's very easy to distinguish the bucks, individual bucks versus, seeing the same ones over and over, because their antlers are very specific to that deer. It's hard to tell if you see a doe, whether you're seeing it multiple times in multiple locations, but the bucks are very obvious to tell if you're seeing, various bucks or the same one over and over. So over that 1.5 months, we did count 43 different antlered bucks on our trail cams. So that equates to about 1 buck per 12.5 acres. So if we assume we have a 1-to-1 buck-doe ratio, that would be 86 deer on site. But after visual observations and consulting with the DNR, we feel that the true ratio on site would be better 1-to-2, or even possibly 1-to-3. We see a lot more does than we do on site than we do bucks. So if that were accurate at a 1-to-2 ratio, there'd be 129 deer. At 1-to-3, it's 172 deer. So again, that's a range because we don't really quite know how many does are on site, but we do see more does. Because the numbers were high, we followed up with a transect line study. So this method was recommended by the DNR as another, secondary way to verify this. So what this method involves is walking in a straight line across the property, and then you document how many deer dropping piles you encounter every 100 feet. Once you gather this data, you enter it into a standard formula that is, an industry standard. And then using that formula, you can estimate how many deer are on site. So counting the deer scat piles and putting it in the formula, we calculate about 152 deer on site. And in the report, it's very detailed about, you know, what's involved with that equation and how we came up with those numbers. So we consulted with the DNR to see what numbers we should be having on site. And what their response is for a property 540 acres, similar in size to the sanctuary, it can support approximately 35 to 40 deer for a healthy deer population. So based on the information we gathered and the recommendation by the DNR as far as how many deer the site can support, you know, there are quite a few number of deer on site versus what it can really support. And then we were also asked to look into what are the various control methods besides, you know, doing a controlled hunt on site. So there are really only 3 methods that I'm aware of that the DNR told us are options. One is trapping and relocating. One is using contraception. And then one is population management through a controlled hunt. So those are really the 3 options that you would have available to you. Currently, the DNR is not allowing trapping and relocation due to CWD concerns. So they don't allow that in the state at all in any circumstance. They will also not allow the use of contraceptions. So the DNR will not permit us to use that. So the only method that the DNR would give us approval to use would be a controlled hunt. And that is actually the method that they are recommending if we go forward with trying to manage the deer population, that is really our only solution moving forward. So if we were to consider this, you know, we looked at what rules would we implement to make it safe to the public, to make it safe to the 4K program, and still be able to manage it safely and, you know, work with the DNR to make sure it's done properly. So, you know, I did outline in that report several, but review right here with you guys, just so that you have some of the details of how we would approach that if we do consider approving it. So the sites that we would look at placing the participants of the program would be, they would all be 1,000 feet at minimum away from the Oak Learning Center, so the 4K building. And it would be 50 yards from all trails. So that would be the first one. Second bullet point is, you know, all participants would have to abide by the regulations put forward by the sanctuary and also by the DNR. And we would obviously require that they uphold the high standards for respect of the wildlife, the grounds, and the visitors on site. The management activities held would only happen when school is not in session and the park is closed to the public. So hunting would not be allowed when the gates are open at all. And then in addition, only archery would be no firearms. So there's an ordinance banning firearms within the city. So archery is the only method that we can look at using there. And then also, because this is a sanctuary, and you know, there's so many concerns about the safety of the animals, the public, the site, we would handpick the participants who would participate in this program. So it wouldn't just be open to the general public. There wouldn't really even be an application process. We would hand select the people that we would use and the participants. Also, each deer harvested at the sanctuary would undergo testing for CWD and pass that information on to the DNR. That is actually a requirement for our deer management program throughout the city starting this year. So we'll definitely follow through with that with you know, the sanctuary if we proceed with that. And really, the one benefit to all of this is all of the deer harvested within the program would then be donated back to the wildlife sanctuary for food, because we're hand selecting the participants. We wouldn't be allowing them to keep the deer. And literally all of it would go back to feed the animals, which would offset our operational expenses out there, which is great. And then continually and ongoing, what we would do on a yearly basis is we'll monitor the deer herd population, the overall deer health, and then we'll work with the DNR to kind of review this plan on a yearly basis. And in the years that we need to continue with this, we would. And in the years that we don't, we wouldn't do it. So that's kind of our proposal moving forward. And, the recommendations we brought forward to manage the deer population on site was really not taken lightly. I mean, after all, this is the wildlife sanctuary. So really a lot of thought was put into this. But what we're seeing as a staff is we're witnessing the deer on site suffering due to the lack of food and sufficient habitat. I mean, we're seeing it. We're seeing deer that are skinny and, more so than they should be. And that's not the mission of the sanctuary either, is to manage the deer population in that way either. So, that's the report that we put together. I guess I'm open for any questions you might have. It looks as though we do have Josh Martinez on the line or in the meeting. He is the DNR biologist that we consulted with in relation to putting this plan together. Very knowledgeable, very helpful. We also have Steve Lakatos on the line here. Steve is our new superintendent out at the Wildlife Sanctuary. So I haven't had a chance to introduce any of you to Steve yet. He started a few months ago, literally right when the COVID pandemic started. So usually I bring new employees into the park committee to actually do a person-to-person meeting so you can put a name to the face. Haven't done that yet because we haven't had any face-to-face meetings, but Steve is here if you have any questions for him, and you'll get to meet him in the near future, hopefully in person.
Alder Gerlach?
I don't have any questions, but I tell you, I read every word of your report. I've never read a report like that before. And I was just so thrilled to see how we have people who are so gifted in this area and care so much about our wildlife. And thank you for giving us a report that even I could read and understand. I skipped a little part about equation because that makes me itch. But otherwise, I thought it was just wonderful, and I am very much in favor. It kind of brought tears to my eyes to think of you hunting those deer, but I realize it has to be done. I congratulate you on a great study and a great report.
Alder Brunette?
Yes, thank you, Chairman. I agree wholeheartedly. Director Ditchett, I remember when we talked about this last fall, it was a tough issue because you're basically acknowledging that deer are going to have to be killed at the wildlife sanctuary, which is kind of a paradox in a way. And I know that I'm very impressed with the report. I mean, it's exactly what we were hoping would be presented back, the need for it, the methods that we could use. I guess I personally am okay with the controlled hunt. I think you have done an excellent job considering everything. I guess my only concern is Alderperson Lefebvre is not on the call. I know she had a lot of constituents who had reached out to her. Oh, she is. Is she here?
I am
there
here.
she is.
Yes,
Okay,
I am
okay.
here. Yes.
So that was going to be my only point. I would want to hear from Alder Lefebvre what the public comment in her district is. Because I know in different municipalities, when there have been controlled hunts of geese or any other animals, sometimes it's met with great public resistance. I just want to make sure we're aware of any of that pushback we might receive. I personally am okay with it. I want to make that clear, but I want to be mindful of what the public reaction might be. Thank you. That's all.
Can I answer that?
Yep,
yeah. I would say the majority out here are in favor of it because they're seeing so much deer coming in. In the winter is the worst because of there's very little, available for them. We can get herds of 13 in 5 houses here. We can get that many coming in. So Yeah, we've been seeing this explode. I would say I've been here 48 years, and about 42 years we never saw deer. Nobody out here saw a deer coming, and so that's about how long, 6 years or so that we've been seeing deer coming in now. So yeah, it just all of a sudden, yeah, the deer herd exploded, and I do like seeing deer, but it's a problem with them crossing. I mean, I chase them out my yard, but I'm trying, all of a sudden, I got to watch for cars. You don't want to chase them and, across the road. When cars are coming, and they're, I don't know, they're not aware sometimes of cars, I think. They just will run right in front of them. And I don't want to see them hit by a car or somebody have damaged a car or, or have an accident. And then, so I know it's necessary. It's something, and I'm a little disappointed that they, in a way, won't let you use contraceptives instead of killing them, but they won't let us. So then that's the only option that's there, and it would have to be done. But my question is, okay, you said it's 1,000 yards or 1,000 feet from the building.
1,000 feet.
1,000 feet.
Yes.
Well, that would pretty much mean the western section of the sanctuary that is, fenced all in. That would be, I'm right across the sanctuary entrance. So pretty much that whole area won't be hunted. The only way they can go into the other section where the yard waste is, from Dan's. Dan's divides it. It's all fenced pretty much. The only time they could go from one section to the other is when you have the gates open. On Dan's, those two small gates. And I don't know how much they move back and forth from that. So I'm questioning if you're really going to get to the number that you want to cull, because a good share of them are in this one section over here.
We do have a map that we can share with you. I don't have it available right here, right now, but you'll see on that map that there are areas on the west end of the property where you would be able to hunt that are beyond that 1,000-foot limit. So we can share that map with you before the council meeting if you'd like.
Okay, because, I'm just concerned too that, that 1,000 feet might eliminate areas where you can't get at, can't do do it properly, what needs to be done.
Yeah, with that, and the reason that stipulation is in there is because it is a school. And so we have those requirements because of the proximity of the school. So, but I understand your concerns, but you'll see on the map that there are areas where hunting would be allowed on that west end.
Okay, as long as you feel that there's enough in those areas. And I did read, there was another report. I don't know where I read it. It was the DNR was going through this, and they also mentioned, again, like I mentioned, the overabundance of the garlic mustard, the Phragmites, the creeping Charlie is also causing some of the problems because it's really diminishing areas where they can actually eat. Unfortunately, they don't eat that stuff. It would be great if they did, but they don't eat those species. Buckthorn, they don't eat any of it, and that's proliferating, and it also then decreases areas that they have available food in the sanctuary. So that's another thing. I know we talked about that before. That's another thing that we have to look at, what we can do to also diminish those species. Okay?
Okay, yeah. I'm in favor of this. I think hunting is perfectly fine. I think that's what the purpose of hunting is a key component to wildlife management in the entire state. And so I'm fine with this. I'm just curious, how will you choose your hunters?
Well, Steve, can you answer that question?
Yes. Hi, thank you guys for having me. So we will be choosing from a very small group of people that we have worked with in the past and that we know and trust, and that will make sure that we'll kind of abide by, what we need taken and the numbers that we want to get. So it's from a small group of people that we already have been in these programs and are known to us.
That's the only question I had. I'm all for it. Any further discussion, questions?
What kind of, what are you looking for a motion to move?
I would be looking for approval to reinstate the on-site deer management program per the recommendations in the plan that I just presented.
I would move that we do that.
Yeah, second.
Burlak? Yes.
Second.
Second by Alder Brunette. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Okay, that passes unanimously.
We're ready.
Number 5, consideration with possible action on adopting the updated 2020 through 2024 Green Bay Parks Recreation and Forestry Open Space Plan. Staff.
Yeah, so I've included the plan in the agenda packet. It's a pretty lengthy, detailed plan. I hope you had a chance to review it. So we recently completed revisions to this plan. The main purpose of creating this document is to identify potential projects for future DNR grant applications. So in order to receive DNR stewardship grants, all municipalities that want to participate in that are required to update this plan every 5 years. So we've had this plan. I've been with the city 20 years. It's been with us many years before that. And every 5 years we update it. So as you page through it, you'll see that there's chapters relating to the purpose of the document. There's a community description. There's an inventory of our existing park system. The plan also sets guidelines for possible acquisitions, operations, and development projects. So the proposed projects are generated through multiple sources. So these projects were generated from input from staff, from input from city council members, and also requests from the public. Nothing listed in the plan is mandatory. So anything proposed or listed in the plan still needs to come forward to the park committee and city council for approval to secure funding to implement any of this. One noticeable change that you'll see compared to previous drafts, if you have a chance to look at our previous drafts, is we were able to incorporate public input through a survey that was conducted last winter. So in the past, we had never conducted a survey to include in this proposed plan. So the public was asked to comment on current and recommended park facilities, amenities, and programming. There were 687 individuals that responded to the survey, and then the results of the survey were incorporated into the plan. So this plan is really a very comprehensive list of projects, and there's really too much information to go over all the specific recommendations within the plan at this park committee. But I will tell you that the plan was reviewed by the mayor's office, the Public Works Department, and the Community and Economic Development Department for their comments and inputs. And they provided comments accordingly, which we incorporated into the plan. Really, the key here is, the projects that didn't get done in the last plan get carried over into this plan. And then we use input and suggestions from all the various sources to add the other projects that weren't in the last plan. And we try to make it consistent with all of the other plans that are out there. So we have the smart growth plan that the planning department has done in the past. This should correlate with that. We have the bike and pedestrian plan that was adopted last year. This should correlate with that plan also. So really what I'm looking for, I'd be happy to answer any questions that you have on the specifics of the plan or the rationality or the rationale in the plan as far as how we put it together, or even if you have questions on specific projects, be happy to answer those. But really what I'm looking for is the for you to approve the updated plan, because this is the process that we have to go through in order to continue to receive DNR stewardship grants in the future.
Does anyone have any questions or comments they care to make? Alder Gerlach.
Of course, as you might suspect, I read almost all of it because I've never seen it before. I read only about 80% because it's really long. I think it's a wonderful report. And I just would like to say that it's very definitely updated because it lists Old Preble Neighborhood Park by name. Thank you.
Yes, we did that last week.
Alder Burnett.
Yeah, I was gonna say that's pretty current. We just voted on that. Dan or Director Ditchite, is there any place, I didn't see it in here, where shore fishing, like not boat fishing, but city access for shoreline fishing, not just for city parks, but all parks in the Green Bay area? It's a question I often get asked.
Yes, there should be a section in there. Let me just find it for you real quick. So basically, we do have a section in here where it just talks about general categories, and then what the goals are in relation to those categories. And I believe my recollection is that there is a shoreline fishing category. So just give me a second.
I read it.
Yeah.
Okay. And so basically as long as it's listed in this plan as a needed amenity within the city, and even if we don't put a specific location to it, we can point to it saying it's in our outdoor rec plan. It's a priority for the city, that the city council adopted the plan, supporting that priority. And so we can show that it's now in the plan and the city council is supportive of it. So, but I believe we do have a general category somewhere in here for that.
Okay, thank you.
I'll take a motion to approve.
Just so you know, that's on page 44 under fishing areas.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
I move that we approve this report.
Yes, I second.
Motion by Alder Gerlach, seconded by Alder Brunette. If there's no further discussion, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? That passes unanimously. Good job, Director Ditchite.
Thank you.
We're good.
We're on to 6, consideration with possible action on approving a resolution to support the updated 2024, no, same thing. Okay, Green Bay Parks, Recreation, Forestry, Open Space Plan. There we go.
So what this is just a formal resolution that the council would adopt supporting the plan that you just adopted. So this resolution is also a requirement by the DNR. And once it's approved at City Council, if it's approved at City Council, this will actually become an attachment to that plan. So I'm just recommending approval of the resolution in support of this.
Sounds reasonable. Is there a motion?
I'll make that motion.
I'll second it.
Motion by Alder Burnett to approve the resolution, seconded by Alder Gerlach. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
Aye.
Okay, that passes unanimously.
Go ahead.
All right. Number 7, consideration with possible action on the report of the purchasing manager. Purchasing manager. Do we do A and B together, or do they need to be separated?
I would recommend separating them.
Okay, so A, request approval to purchase one utility vehicle for $60,268 from Bobcat Plus Inc., the lowest responsible vendor, piggybacked off of the 2020 RFQ number 3259 from DPW.
So the funding for this acquisition was included in our 2020 capital improvement plan. The budget set aside for this purchase is $78,000. So as part of this, we'll be purchasing a tool cat with a broom, a snow blower, and a turbine blower. Now, the turbine blower is like a high for leaves in the fall. So this was originally quoted out through a Public Works quote, and you'll notice that the dollar amount on the quote doesn't quite match the dollar amount that I'm saying we're purchasing it for, or we're proposing to purchase it for. That's because the purchasing, DPW purchased different attachments than we're purchasing. So my understanding, and maybe Calvin, our purchasing manager, can attest to this, but my understanding is the purchase price of the vehicle is the same as what Public Works paid for theirs. Just the attachments are different. Now, the purchase price of $60,268 does not include the turbine blower. So we will be purchasing that separately through a different vendor. And the cost for that will be, we're assuming it'll be around $10,000, and that's currently being quoted out. So even when you add the $10,000 to the 60, it's still under our budgeted price.
Good. Any questions or anything, comments? Take a motion to approve.
Move to approve.
Second.
Yeah, there you go. Motion by Alder Brunette, seconded by Alder Gerlach to approve.
Just a quick question.
Yes.
I just want to make sure I understood. You said this is in the budget.
It was in, I apologize, not in our budget. It was in our bond request, our 2020 bond request, as part of the equipment replacement bond request.
Okay, so Alder Brunette and Alder Scannell, you're comfortable with that then
Oh,
financially?
yeah, that's.
Okay,
It's
okay,
bonded for, so we're, yep.
okay.
So 7A, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, that passes unanimously. On to 7B, request approval to purchase one 26,000 GVW cab and chassis for $69,970 from Truck Country of Iowa, Inc., the lowest responsible vendor, from 2019 RFQ number 3174 for Parks Department.
So the funding for this acquisition was also included in our 2020 capital improvement plan versus the last one. The budget set aside for this was $97,000. And this will replace Unit 21, which has exceeded its useful life expectancy. So there, again, with this one, there will be additional costs beyond the suggested purchase price of $69,970. So we've already issued a PO for a flatbed and a hoist for this vehicle for $13,977. In addition, we'll need about another $5,000 to purchase items such as safety lighting. So when we're working on the road, we have adequate safety precautions. So even after all of these purchases are completed, the vehicle will still come in under budget at approximately $89,000 or $90,000. So as you'll see in the quote package, there were 3 vendors that quoted on the project, and we are proposing to purchase the vehicle from which is Truck Country. So if you have any questions, our purchasing manager is here. I can also answer additional questions that you might have.
If not, I'll take a motion.
Move to approve.
Second.
Motion to approve by Alder Brunette, seconded by Alder Gerlach. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Congratulations, you now have a chassis.
Thank you.
Chairman,
Yeah, yes?
may I quick, I'm going to have to go. I was just going through the report from Dan Ditchide, Director. Can I quick and ask him a question? Would I report to him a tree that needs to be trimmed that's blocking the stop and go light on the corner of Webster and East Mason? I was going to call Chris Purlod on it.
Yeah, just either leave me a voicemail or shoot me an email, and I will forward it on to the Forestry Department to look at it.
Okay, all right, thank you. I'm
Thanks.
sorry, guys, I have to go.
Yep, that's
So,
fine.
nice meeting, thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye. Are we on to number 8? Oh, no, there's no number 8. Aha. Informational. Are we ready for the informational, James?
Ready to go.
Staff update to the 2020 City of Green Bay Parks COVID-19 reopening plan as it relates to splash pads and wading pools. Staff?
So I'll have James present this.
So, as you guys remembered, seems like a little while ago, but back in May, we reviewed the reopening plan with the park committee, and we at that time decided, based on your recommendations, to open the wading pools and the splash pads around the same time as opening of the pools, or a pool, depending on how many staff we could secure, and also how we could make sure we could open safely with our procedures. So we didn't really commit to a date. We just said sometime in early July. Since then, on June 10th, we discussed the aquatics again as it relates to the plan, and the park committee directed staff to open both the splash pads and wading pools as part of that plan as we open the pools. So our plan always was to get a pool open first for our community, which we successfully did yesterday officially. And we wanted to operate for a little bit and just see what kind of concerns we had and we dealt with from an aquatic standpoint before rushing to open up splash pads and wading pools. So as you know, we just opened yesterday, like I said, so we're not quite done assessing, and we haven't. Maybe tomorrow and Friday, when we have these nice sunny hot days, we'll have a much better assessment of what we're dealing with there. But our plan overall right now is to open splash pads in a few weeks after we have the opportunity to assess the COVID-19 issues that may come up with Colburn Pool and any other, so I don't have an exact date for you at this time. But I did want to address a few things. So the splash pads in our community have not previously ever been staffed. So I wanted to update you guys. At the time when we originally talked about this, there really was no splash pads that we knew of in the state that were even open. Now we found that there are a few. When I say a few, I mean 4 or 5 throughout the entire state that we have found. So if or when we do open splash pads, we would advise not staffing them. So due to our staffing concerns that already exist, that's one of the reasons, of course, we could only open up 1 out of our 3 pools, and also the reason why we could only open up 16 out of our 32 playground sites is merely due to the lack of staff available at this time. So all the splash pads in the state that are currently open are not staffing their splash pads. So we have always, though, staffed our wading pools, and because of this, because there's standing water in wading pools, we've always had to staff them. And as I just mentioned, we are running into a significant staffing shortage in seasonal help. So there's just simply not enough staff available at this time to open wading pools without closing, for example, Colburn Pool, or looking into reducing the number of maybe summer park playground sites, or some of our other programming would have to, shift staff over to wading pools if we chose to open wading pools. So it is very unlikely that we'll be able to open up wading pools this season due to that staffing shortage. So that's kind of where we're at right now.
Any questions? Comments?
Chairman? Thank you, Alder Scannell. James, do you know offhand, when you're taking a look, I guess, at which splash pads you're looking at opening, do you have like an order in mind? Like certain pads might take priority over others because of the facility or needs?
I guess yes. In a way, so we took a look at all of our splash pads. So we have 9 splash pad areas, and they're all uniquely different depending on what neighborhood they're in. We also, for example, have one on City Deck. That's not necessarily, I would say, a splash pad. Traditionally, as you see in parks, it's more of a, if you've been down there, you got spouts of water coming up, just a way to get wet and kind of creates a good ambiance for that, city deck, kind of going by there and seeing kids and families down there in that location. So depending on the location, yes, we have considered a couple different thought processes. One is, do we look at the locations that already have playground program where we'd at least have staff nearby? They wouldn't necessarily be responsible for supervising the splash pad, but at least they could keep a general eye on, that area. And we also looked at, for example, I was at the community input meeting over at, Seymour, and, so we looked at areas that maybe don't have the summer playground program, maybe looking at them as a priority. We really haven't made a determination at this time if we would only open up a certain amount. I mean, we more than likely would either open them or not open them. So we'd either open them all up or open none of them up.
Okay, so I think in the purpose of my question, which I'm sure you probably know because you were at that meeting, I would really like to implore you to add Seymour Park to that top of the list. One of the things that we're really trying to achieve over there with the continuing circumstances there is programmed activity. And we want to see the park utilized. We need people to be in that park to kind of debunk this sad myth that is starting to emerge that the park is not safe. I mean, we obviously don't want that to take root. And so we are looking to do a number of things with volunteers and other organizations to program activity in that park. And I think it would be wonderful if the city were able to contribute to that dialogue by opening up the splash pads and of course any other things that we've talked about at the meeting. But that is my appeal to you, I guess, is to add Seymour Park to the top of that list.
Okay.
Thank you.
I just have a question, James. We're looking at probably a couple of weeks at the earliest that you would open the splash pads?
Yes, I would say, we would like a good week, I guess, of running Colburn and, from aquatic perspective, making sure, and also keeping, we keep very closely in touch with, so we have a person from our state Park and Rec Association that actually he's actually tasked with kind of giving us an update on which communities are opening, some of the concerns and or successes that followed those openings and what they're running into. So we're keeping very close knit, with our networking of what's working in splash pads. But I would say yes, within the next couple weeks we would have start opening splash pads.
Yeah, that was going to be my next, because you had mentioned they were opening up elsewhere. If we would have any information by that time from those places that had opened up. So I guess we will. So that's good. So I trust you to make the right decisions, whether we should or shouldn't. And good luck. Anything else from anyone? Anything else you care to add, James?
Not at this time.
Okay, thanks.
Well, I guess what I'd be looking at is a possible motion would be receive and place on file.
Yep.
I'll make that motion to receive and place on file, but I will, obviously every splash pad in the city is important and it's hard to prioritize one over the other. Yeah. But I concur with what Alderman Johnson stated. I was at the neighborhood meeting talking with several of the neighbors there, and due to the crime and as Alderman Johnson said, the perception that it's an unsafe park, I do concur that is a higher, they're all priorities. I know that, but I would agree that that's a higher priority due to the issues we're having in that area. So, for what it's worth.
I think, as James said, since they're not going to be staffed, if we're going to open them, we can open them all. So I don't know if there really is any priority. I think it's one or all. So
right.
Hopefully they can all be opened. But if not, then I don't think
they're trying to phase one in slowly. Maybe try one early. That would be my choice. But again, just my 2 cents.
Right. Yeah. Okay. Thanks. Motion to receive, place on file by Alder Brunette.
Second.
Second by Alder Gerlach. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, that passes unanimously. Okay to go to 2, James?
Yep, we're good.
Okey doke. Director's report on updates and recent activities of the Parks, Recreation, and Forestry Department.
Yeah, I just wanted to point out a few things. Some of this James kind of already mentioned throughout the meeting here, or we've talked about. So Colburn Pool, we officially opened this week on Tuesday. So there was about a 1-week delay, and that, just so you know, the delay was due to construction issues, and so that's what caused the delay, because it was still being renovated. But everything seems to be functional and working well, and the health department approved us to open, so everything's going well there. The playground installation at East River Van Beaver is currently underway. If you get any questions as to what's going on there. And then summer day camps at the sanctuary began the week of July 6th. The summer playground program also began that same week. And as James mentioned, we were able to open 16 of the sites. I believe that there's normally 32. So we're at about half capacity with the playground sites. And then Bay Beach is, I'm sure you're aware, but it's now open on a daily basis with a limited capacity. So if you have any questions on anything that we've opened to date, or any questions on anything else listed in that report, happy to answer them.
Alder Gerlach.
I'd just like to know what your experience has been in terms of, safety, social distancing, sanitizing, masks, etc.
And so each program and facility is handled differently, because it's kind of sites, but we put together a reopening plan for almost everything that we've reopened. And so like at Bay Beach, I'll use that as an example. So all of our employees are wearing face masks or face guards 100% of the time. We put precautions in there also to limit capacities. So we limit it now to 2,000, a maximum of 2,000 people at any given time. And we're doing that through the sale of wristbands, which people will get their money back from the wristbands when they leave. That way we can resell it and, get more people back into the park. In addition to the cleaning and the social distancing, our staff is being very proactive. And in the queue lines and on the rides, we're being very proactive, asking people who obviously aren't with each other to separate. Having success with that. People are just kind of getting used to it. And we're also doing additional sanitizing of the restrooms. So we're now doing it on a more regular basis than we did in the past. We're using different chemicals than we've used in the past that kill the virus. And we've implemented more safety control measures. So we've just done a lot of different things at Bay Beach to help keep the public safe and to keep our staff safe. And we've done the same thing with all of our other facilities also. Where we're just doing things differently. One example is the playground summer program. So again, our staff members have to wear the masks. We also don't keep the buildings open to the kids. So all of their time is spent outside. And if they need to get something, the staff members go into the building to get it. We've also hired staff, seasonal staff, to actually clean and sanitize those restrooms on a daily basis for that summer program. So we're doing a lot more cleaning and sanitizing for that program also. So like I said, we're implementing as much as we can, and it's been pretty successful. And we really haven't had too many complaints on it, and people are very receptive to it and understand it. And they're happy that we're doing this, is kind of what we've been saying.
Thank you.
Yep.
Anyone else? Questions or comments on the director's report?
Good job, Dan. I just want to say good job, Dan. I know, this has been tough for the Parks Department, trying to figure out the best thing to do. And it's nice to see Bay Beach open, period. And I know that takes a lot of planning, so I appreciate it.
Thank you.
I'll second that, but I'll also take a motion
I'll make a motion to receive and place on file.
Second.
Motion by Alder Brunette, seconded by Alder Gerlach. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, that is received and placed on file. Our next park committee is scheduled for August 12th, 2020. Anything else from staff? Take a motion to adjourn.
I move that we adjourn.
Second.
Motion to adjourn by Alder Gerlach, seconded by Alder Brunette. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, we're adjourned. We'll take a 10-minute break and then